Hey, what's up guys, MashShiny here, come back with a brand new video for you guys. Today we're going to be talking about if a potential operation comes up, what you should specifically be doing, and a couple other things. Let's hop on into it. Now, since last year, roughly around this time, I created a video talking about what to do with an operation, and then an operation came out less than 2 weeks later. This means I'm obviously qualified and very specifically in the know about when an operation is going to come. Obviously, I'm kidding here, but today we're going to be going over a couple main things that are especially very important because you're not going to be thinking about it at the time when an operation comes. But the first thing I want to mention is selling quickly. Now, this one's very important because there is a time span on this. I've mentioned it a couple times in the past month, but if an operation was to come, if you're there in that first hour, honestly, it might not be a bad idea to liquidate a lot of your inventory, especially if these are super common items. We're going to go over a couple examples, but the biggest thing is with cases. A lot of cases are going to drop down in price, especially the ones that you're probably holding. If you're holding a ton of them for an investment purpose, so is everyone else. And those cases are going to be the most volatile and the most likely to drop, especially if you're holding active duty cases. This is the clutch case. Last time during Operation Riptide, it dropped 50% from the before Operation Riptide to the absolute minimum during Operation Riptide. And while this is definitely something we won't expect to see repeating that big of a drop, I think there's definitely going to be more than enough margin for you to squeeze it out, but always use your own judgment. Now, with selling quickly, out of all the things I'm going to talk on this list, I'd say this is the most relaxed. It's not necessarily required to make a decent amount of profit because you might have a decent amount of funds in your Steam wallet. There's a lot of different other circumstances that fall into it, and this one, relatively speaking, is just a way for you to squeeze out a little bit of extra profit if you're willing to hold on to some of that risk for a short period of time. After that, though, we have what I call buy quickly, and now this is probably not what you're thinking of. This is actually going to be doing with the actual operation shop, and for this I'm going to use the example of the Riptide shop right here. Now, out of all of these items, there's only one thing that you can buy when the operation first releases that's a mistake in my opinion, and that's actually the Operation Riptide case. Now, this is for one very important reason. Every single thing in this operations shop is not specifically you buy it, you get it. And this is what I mean. Everything on this is a gamble. Everything except the Riptide case, you're buying it with the hopes of getting a good specific item, and therefore it's not a buy you get it, which means it's not going to have that 7-day cooldown. The thing about the Riptide case is if you bought it, you had to wait 7 days before you could list it on the market, and therefore everyone really had the opportunity. But if you're there during an operation, and especially if you're there very early, it might be actually not a terrible idea to buy up some stars, maybe 100 stars, and go ahead and open up some of these operation rewards and see what you get. Obviously, there's probably not going to be a guarantee return on your investment of over 100%, but this might be the best ROI you're going to get throughout the entire operation, especially if you play your cards right. And what you can also do is just go ahead and knock out that first week of missions very quickly so you get those 10 stars there, and then immediately pick something and sell it on the market. The biggest thing is the turnaround time between the operation releasing and you starting to sell stuff that's operation related on the market. That's going to be the biggest thing, is if whether you're looking at an hour, a day, or a week, your profit's going to be continually decreasing throughout the entire time of the operation, almost guaranteed. But you actually need to be a little bit careful when you're picking out when to sell your items, especially if you're opening up some of those collections. I don't want you to fall into the trap of what I call the first night collapse. See, when an operation releases and tons of new items come out, everyone expects the price to decrease significantly. This is why we're able to open up those stars and potentially get a decent ROI, or open up the Riptide case. That's something I didn't mention previously, is if you wanted to buy the Riptide case to open it, that's not necessarily a bad idea. It's just if you're buying the Riptide case from the shop to hang on to it. But revolving back here, this is a big trap because people think that these skins are constantly going to be decreasing in price, and definitely they will over time during the operation. The price isn't going to stay insanely high, but the thing is, there's a small trap that a lot of people fall into where they believe on that first night the price is only going to decrease because of everyone buying the stars. This is a trap I personally fell into, and what happened was I sold my UMP Fade for $50 less than I really should have. If you still don't get what I mean, that's completely okay. Looking at this graph here, you should understand what I mean. This is the UMP Fade graph, but you can see that that first night out of the next 2 weeks was the cheapest time to buy a UMP Fade on average. This means that people were panic selling their UMP Fades after buying stars and opening them up, and therefore they wanted to get rid of it before it lost too much of its value. But the thing is, so many people were undercutting each other that the Fade UMP really lost more value that night than it would in the next 2 weeks. This means that you really could have actually bought a UMP fade on that first night and sold it a week later for about $100 profit, not including Steam tax. Now this one is going to be very risky. Obviously, it could have gone the exact opposite way and no one would have flinched. So it's definitely something that's a bit more risky, but if you've got a gut feeling about something like this, it might not actually be a terrible idea. These things, generally speaking, start to level out very quickly afterwards, and as long as you're not buying for a super inflated price, I don't think the risk of losing your money is overall terribly high. There's definitely a risk though, and you should always make sure you know what you're doing before you go into it. Don't just buy one of these skins expecting to make profit off of it. And the thing is, this has even happened with Operation Broken Fang with the op fade here, so it's definitely a reoccurring thing and not just Operation Riptide specifically. And then the last thing I want to talk about is the liquids that we kind of mentioned in the beginning. See, during all of these times where there is that decrease in price and I was telling you to sell if you're there immediately afterwards, this also brings up the buying opportunity of the people who are buying at the bottom. We talked about the clutch case that lost 50% of its value. You could have bought it when it was 50% cheaper, and that's something I really recommend you do. That first night is going to be a decrease for a significant amount of items, and honestly, if you buy after that decrease on the first night, you're going to be set most likely. There's not a terribly large amount of items that continually decrease throughout the entire operation. Bare minimum, like looking at the breakout case here, you can see that it stays roughly even at that price it dropped down to, but it still only took a couple months to recover back to that price it was sitting at before the operation even started. So I don't think you're going to be regretting your decision to buy in, and you should especially not regret your decision if you're planning to hold these for an extended period of time. This is probably one of the best buying opportunities to exist. Operations are a great time to buy in because everyone is so focused on everything else, which is why we see things like the clutch case down 50%. The clutch case is always going to be a popular case for people to buy and invest into, but because people are so focused on other investments at that time, you can swing in, buy it for 50% cheaper, double your profit potentially if it goes up to 33 cents, and you could be in a very good situation moving forward. The biggest piece of advice I have if you're planning to buy in during this time is to buy liquid items that are most likely cases or capsules or consumables, something that you use it and it goes away. I wouldn't recommend buying skins during this time unless they're trade up skins, potentially from like the Norse collection where they've got the Gungnir. But here, just looking at something like the AK Redline, it's really hard to discern when the actual operation hit just because the price fluctuates so much already. I think you're going to be doing yourself a disservice buying in these skins during this time unless you want it for a play skin, but if you're buying it as an investment or potentially just to flip it, I think you're going to be much better off with cases in this specific situation over buying into skins. But that is really all I have for today, guys. I want to thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.